Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello, everybody. This is our first meeting uh, uh, for classes of Syntax 1. We're going to deal with the first topic on the syllabus, namely the introduction. In the introduction, we're going to cover a number of headings. First of which is the goals of linguistic descriptions. In doing linguistic descriptions, there are two goals in mind, in fact. First goal is describing human language in general. And the second goal is to describe individual languages like Arabic, English, French, or German. In describing individual languages, we may approach them or their study in two ways. Either we trace the history of every language and in every aspect of that language, and if we do so, we're doing what we call a diachronic description of the language, because we're tracing its history from A to Z. But if we study the language at a particular point in its history or at a certain age or period of its history, we're not interested in the evolution of the language, that is the historical change, but we're rather interested in the study of language at a particular point in its history. For instance, we study the Old English period or the Middle English period or the Modern English period, or we study the language of writers like Chaucer, Shakespeare, Dickens, etc. Then we move on to the second heading, in fact, second heading, or the third heading, the third heading, in fact, deals with the varieties of English. In dealing with the varieties of English, we talk of and about two things. Idiolects, that is in individual speakers' language that bears features that are uniquely his own, the speaker's own, that is the individual dialect, if you like. Or we deal with dialects, that is the varieties of the language. In dealing with dialects, we have a number of parameters, or if you like, criteria according to which we talk about the dialects of English. Such criteria comprise or include geographical origin. And here, dealing with geographical origin, we talk of and about British English, American English, Canadian English, Australian English, New Zealand English. So we have here 5 varieties of English according to geographical origin or geographical region, if you like. As far as British English is concerned, we have the standard language, namely available or represented by the language used in the BBC and the language used by educated people. Then we may talk of, as far as British English is concerned, a number of non-standard local dialects such as Yorkshire English, Cockney, etc. The second criterion for the varieties or dialects of English is social status, and this has to do with married or unmarried. We talk of also classes like the common people, the nobility, and so forth. The third criterion or parameter is profession. So we have linguistic jargons for medicine, for instance, engineering, teaching, carpentry, etc. The next parameter is education. So we have the language of the educated and the language of the non-educated. Age, we have the language of the young people and the language of the old people. Gender, we have the language of men, for instance. So there is certain linguistic jargon available among men, and female, so the language used by women, for instance. Then you have the spoken versus the written registers of the language. Of course, you can also talk of the formal and informal forms of the language. Formal between superiors and their the people they are in charge of, and informal among friends, for instance, or people of equal status. Third heading, deals with the levels of linguistic analysis. We talk here of and about 4 linguistic levels: the sound level, the morphological level, the syntactic level, and the semantic level. As far as the sound level is concerned, here we talk of and about 2 sub-levels: phonetics, that is sound production and sound perception, and phonology. Here we talk of and about the rules governing the behavior of sounds. In the morphological level, we talk about the internal structure of words, because words are made up of morphemes. On the syntactic level, in fact, we deal with sentences, that is forming grammatical strings of words according to sets of rules, because in syntax, as in the other levels of the language, things are governed by rules. Then the 4th level is the semantic level. Here in the semantic level, we deal with meaning. So meanings, we have meanings of individual words and whole sentences. And the meaning of a sentence is not simply the sum total of the meanings of the words it contains. So as you can see, you have the linguistic levels, and then you have the component in grammar. You have sound level, opposite to it, you have phonetics and phonology, morphological level, morphology, syntactic level, syntax, semantic level, semantics. The next heading has to do with word order and sentence structure. You see, every language has its own word order. And, at least there are 4 major word orders of languages in the world. English is an SVO language. What does this mean? This means that the typical English sentence starts with the subject, and then the subject is followed by the verb, categorically speaking, and if the verb is transitive, then it is followed by an object. You have examples in here. The boy kicked the ball, so the boy is the subject, kicked is the verb, and the ball is the object. So the order is, as you can see, SVO, but you cannot get, like in the example, kicked the boy, the ball does not work in English, or the ball kicked the boy. This is, this is not acceptable in English. The next topic is word meaning and sentence structure. So the structure of a sentence depends on word order and the meaning of the words in the sentence. Look, he looked up the number. B, he looked up the chimney. These 2 sentences have different meanings, different structures, and therefore they have different meanings. In the first sentence, the verb is look up, and therefore it is made up of 2 units. So it's a multi-word verb. In other words, look is a verb and up is an adverb. So we have a phrasal verb. Whereas the second sentence, we have a single word verb. The verb is look, that is look. But up is a preposition and it belongs with the chimney. So this means, okay, so we have, a different structure and therefore a different meaning. Now, you see, in fact, one of the things syntax helps us do is that it helps us establish, relationships in between sentences. So if two or more sentences have the same meaning, then we said that they form a paraphrase relationship. Like if we say, the boy ate the apple, and the apple was eaten by the boy. So these two sentences are different in structure because one is in the active voice, the other is in the passive voice, but they have the same meaning and they have the same participants. So we say they form a paraphrase relationship. But sometimes one sentence may have more than one interpretation, either because of one word in the sentence that may have, more than one meaning, or because of the structure of the sentence. If the sentence is ambiguous because of one word in the sentence, then we have what is known as lexical ambiguity. If I say, I sat by the bank, the sentence is said to be ambiguous. That is, it is an ambiguous sentence because of one word. The word is bank. So we don't know what is meant by bank. Is it the bank of a river, or is it a financial institution like the Cairo Amman Bank at the university or campus? So here the sentence is said to be ambiguous because of the word bank. Now, if the sentence is ambiguous because of its structure, i.e. the syntactic relationships holding between its different constituents, then the sentence is said to be structurally ambiguous. Example, the lamb is ready to eat. Here there are two meanings of the sentence. The lamb is ready to eat its food, and you notice that the subject of the sentence in here is the lamb. So you're talking about a living lamb, a lamb that walks. In the second sentence, someone eats the lamb, and so the lamb in here functions as a direct object. And therefore, you see, you're talking about in here a slaughtered, cooked and processed lamb in here. The next heading has to do with the notation of sentence structure. Sentences may be represented in either one of two ways, in fact. Either tree diagramming or bracketing. Tree diagramming, that is, you divide the sentence or in the form of a tree. As you can see in here, the player, which is the subject, go together. Then kick the ball, which is the predicate, they go together. Okay? Then you have the ball, the direct object, they go together. And then the player, the subject, and the predicate, kill the ball, they go together, as you can see. This sentence can also be represented in the form of a tree, like you see in here in figure 2. So the player kicked the ball. You have the player on the one hand, and then you have you have kicked the ball. Kick the ball is further subdivided to kicked, the verb, and the ball, the direct object. The player, the subject, is further divided into the and player, and also the ball into the and ball. In figure 3, the sentence is represented by means of brackets, known as labeled brackets. So you have, these go in twos. So a bracket to the left, a bracket to the right. So two brackets around the determiner there, two brackets around player, the noun, two brackets around the verb, kick, two brackets around the determiner there, two brackets around ball, two brackets around the subject, the player. Okay? Two brackets around the predicate, kick the ball. Okay? Two brackets around the subject and the predicate. So you get 9 to the left and 9 to the right, and therefore the number must always be identical. If we move on to the next topic, which is constituents. Constituents, that is parts, constituents of the sentence. A sentence, any sentence in English, is made up of two major constituents. Talk about constituents, okay, we have immediate constituents and we have constituents. Immediate constituents are constituents that branch immediately from the sentence. In other words, there is no intervening element in between these constituents and the sentence. But constituents, that's constituents of a sentence, in fact, they branch from the sentence, but usually there is an intervening element between them and the sentence, and this is what we call the intervening element is the immediate constituents. Here's an example. The player kicked the ball. So this sentence divides into the player and kicked the ball. Both the player and kick the ball, that is the subject and the predicate, are immediate constituents of the sentence because they branch immediately from the sentence. Now, kicked branches immediately from the predicate, from kick the ball. Likewise, the ball branches immediately from, kick the ball. Now, both of kicked and the ball are constituents of the sentence, but not immediate ones. That is why they have functions on the sentence level. Kicked functions as a predicator, whereas the ball functions as a direct object. Now moving on to two important concepts, namely the rank scale and later on the rank shift. Now, what do we mean by rank scale? By rank scale, we mean that grammar consists of, in fact, units, a number of units or ranks. The smallest unit or the smallest rank in grammar is the morpheme. And a morpheme may form a word or may not form a word. Notice past can form a word. ED cannot form a word, okay, on its own. So we have morphemes as the lowest and the smallest units or ranks, then words, then phrases, then clauses, then sentence. Now in syntax, we do not go beyond the sentence level because the sentence is taken to be the target or the highest unit in syntax. So a morpheme may form a word, but not every morpheme can form a word. Why? Because we do have free or independent morphemes, and only these can form words on their own individually, but bound morphemes cannot form words individually, each on its own. A word in its turn can form a phrase, but not every word can form a phrase. A phrase in turn can form a clause or may form a clause, but not every phrase can form a clause. Only verb phrase, for example, can form clauses on their own. A clause in its turn may form or can form a sentence, but not every clause can form a sentence. Only independent independent clauses can form sentences, but dependent, i.e. subordinate clauses, cannot. Now, a sentence is not a constituent of a unit higher than itself, because the sentence in syntax is taken to be the highest unit. But if we go beyond the sentence, we go into text, and text, that is, here this is the area, or this is the subject of another field, and that is text analysis or discourse analysis, which studies the relationships in between sentences or paragraphs or whatever, or parts of text. Now we move on to the next issue, is rank shift. Shift means change. So rank shift means a change in the rank of a grammatical unit. So when a unit of a given rank becomes a constituent of the same rank, or even of a unit which is one step lower down the scale, we call this rank shift. And this change in rank may occur on the word level, the phrase level, or the clause level. When we combine two words together to form a new word that is a compound, this is called rank shift, but on the word level. When we combine two phrases to form a larger phrase, so we get, for instance, a shirt plus this size, you get a shirt this size, we are in fact changing the rank of each of these two round phrases, because we're making them one unit. So each of these two loses its independence for the sake of being united with another phrase. Then we may combine clauses. The fact pleased me and Selma passed the exam. We're combining two clauses to form a larger clause that is a sentence. The fact that Selma passed the exam pleased me. Okay? So, to wrap up, rank shift may occur on the word level when you combine two or more words together to form a compound. On the phrase level, when you combine two or more phrases to form larger phrases, or when you combine two or more clauses to form, larger units, that is sentences. The next heading is categories and functions. Syntax essentially is interested in studying the relationships in between categories and functions. However, if we look at a linguistic unit as a unit that has individual qualities which it shares with other units of the same kind, like for instance nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, etc., we call this or these categories or classes to which words belong. But if we look at a unit as an element that plays a role in a larger linguistic context, then we're concerned with its function. So there are two things, categories and functions. Category is the part of speech, if you like, be it words, phrases, clauses, etc. Functions, that is what role they play in the sentence, for example. It is worth noting here, however, that there is not necessarily a one-to-one correspondence between categories and functions. This means that the same category may realize more than one function, and the same function may be realized by more than one category. If you look at the example, the boy kicked the ball. Both the boy and the ball are noun phrases, categorically speaking, but they realize different functions. The boy functions as a subject, whereas the ball functions as a direct object. On the other hand, the function subject in the sentence, the news surprised me, is realized by the noun phrase, the news. Whereas in the sentence, that Selma passed the exam surprised me, the subject function is realized by the finite clause, that Selma passed the exam. What I would like for you to do, in fact, is, read this PDF or this handout, and read what is in the book, and do the exercises at the end of the introduction. On Wednesday, I expect you by then to have already read this and to have looked and done the exercises in the workbook, and in there you may want to raise any questions on Wednesday, and then we're going to have another meeting on Thursday, inshallah, at the time of the class. Each section on its own. See you then. Bye bye. Be safe and good luck.